we've got this principle that if we steal something or we defraud something or we engage in a breach of trust, we have to pay back. And the Mishnah in the 10th chapter, we're just entering the last chapter of Bava, the 10th chapter, begins to get into complexities. Maybe there are certain situations when we can't give back. And at the end of the 9th chapter, we dealt, for example, with the convert who died and he doesn't have any heirs. So we pay back to the priests. And now, at the beginning of the 10th chapter, Hagozel umachil et banav umaniach lifnehem. Someone steals and he feeds his children. Or maybe he just puts it in front of them. Umaniach lifnehem. He just puts the stolen object in front of them. Peturin mil shalem. They are exempt from paying. Now, this is really interesting. The Mishnah doesn't say that he is exempt from paying. He's stolen. He has to pay. But maybe he's not around anymore. Maybe, like the convert who deceased and doesn't have heirs, maybe this guy isn't around anymore. The Gemara interprets this to refer to someone who's deceased. Can the original owner reclaim from the heirs, from the children? Someone has stolen and fed his children, or he's just given them the object, put it in front of them, and then he's died. Do they have an obligation to repay? And the Mishnah says, no. They at this point, they seem to own the object. Turin mi l'shalem. At least they're exempt from paying. Although there's a qualification, im hayadavar sheyesh bo achrayut hayavim l'shalem. If it was subject to mortgage, they must pay. And the Maimonides actually expands this to any object which is kind of recognizably the object of the original owner. So not just land, which is considered to be registered or mortgaged or fixed, but, let's say some guy has a cart, which everyone knows is his cart, and it's stolen. And, and the thief dies and the children have the cart. But it's recognizably the cart of the original owner, just as if it's mortgage property. So the Rambam would rule there that they still have to repay, actually out of respect for the original owner. But regardless, there is this gray area, and maybe for what we might call movable properties. So maybe someone wanders into a field and takes some grain and feeds it to his children. We assume that the original owner has given up hope. And we'll come back to this idea in the second Mishnah of the chapter. But before we go there, let's just look at other examples of situations where, ownership is a little bit dubious. Ein portin lo mitevat hamochsin velo mikis shel gabaim. We don't make change from the chest of an excise collector or from the wallet of a tax collector. So these people the assumption of the Mishnah is that tax collectors are, let's say, illegal. And again, Maimonides makes the point that if this is a legal tax collection, if the king has ordained a certain level of tax and a Jew has been told to go out and collect it, i.e. he's going to collect it honestly. That is the assumption. If a Jew's been told to go out and collect the tax and the king has ordained that it should be collected. If we're talking about a legal tax collection, this does not apply. But most tax collectors in the time of the Mishnah are assumed to be scoundrels. So why don't we make change? Ein portin. Why don't we make change from them? Well, if we give them, say, a gold dinar to be split into coins, well, we assume that we're effectively taking ownership of stolen coins when he makes change for us. And so along the same lines, we wouldn't take charity from them. We wouldn't take tzedakah from them. So if we know this money is tainted, we don't take it as tzedakah, because we don't want it's as if we don't want the owner of this tainted money to think that he can somehow get expiation for stealing it by giving it to tzedakah. We're not going to give him any moral comfort at all by taking his tainted money for tzedakah, for charity. At least not from the wallet of the tax collector or the chest of the excise collector. Aval notenhu mitoch beito. We can take it from them at their own house. So if we visit them in their own house and they give us their own money, in other words, money we assume not to be tainted, we can do that. Or minashuk, or we can do that in the market. In other words, if he gives us money that we assume is not tainted, we can take that for tzedakah. But we cannot take tainted funds for tzedakah. Really, really interesting comment on the sacklers, for example. We don't do that. What if we got the money from a robber? And now we're going to go back to this concept of yiush, of giving up hope. Natlu mochsim et chamoro v'natnu lo chamor acher. So the excise collectors took his donkey and they gave him another donkey. So this is a bit like making change, right? We've said, okay, we're not going to make change. But they seem to have defrauded him of his donkey, and then they've given him a different donkey. Well, we know that the second donkey is being stolen from somebody else. But the Mishnah seems to assume, and the halakha assumes, that the original owners have given up hope. Well, I mean, let's carry on. We'll look at the Bartanura. Some bandits took away a man's coat and they gave him a different coat. And the Mishnah rules, Hare elu shelo. He actually does own those new objects that he's been given by the robbers, even though they are tainted. And the Bartanura says that. Hare elu shelo, they are his own. Why? Because in general, the owners have immediately despaired of getting them back. When this tax collector, or when the robber took this guy's coat or his donkey, he never expected to get it back. And then the Bartanura makes an incredibly important, incredibly compact but important point. Uknanehu hayech b'yeush veshinui rushut. And this guy acquired it via despair. In other words, as soon as giving up hope takes place, as soon as the original owner gives up hope of getting the object back, its legal status changes. A bit like a found object. If you find an object which the owner has given up hope of getting back, then when it comes into your domain, it becomes legally yours. So they acquire it via yush, uveshinui rushut, and change of domain. And we'll be coming back to these concepts many, many times as we read as we go through the rest of Nezikin, particularly the next tractate of Bava Metzia. But let's just go back to our Mishnah. So they are his because the original owners have given up hope of recovering them. The original owners have given up hope. And similarly, hamatzil miyat alistim, someone saved something from a flood or from bandits. If the owners have given up hope of recovering it, again we got this word yush. If they've given up hope of recovering it, they belong to him. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Berokia. So now, sorry, I skipped a line. V'chein nechil shel dvorim. The same goes for a swarm of bees. The owner's given up hope of recovering it. If the owners have given up hope, bees can swarm. In other words, a bunch of bees can fly out of one person's hive and they can travel 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters into someone else's garden, and they can just settle there. And if they've gone quite a long way, it's not clear where they've come from. And it's not clear that you can get them back. So it's very likely that the original owners will have given up hope. So the new owner can acquire it because the first owner's given up hope and it's changed domain. It's in his back garden. And now Rabbi Yochanan ben Berokia comes in. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Berokia says, Ne'emenet ishao katan lomar mikan yatzan chilze. Rabbi Yochanan ben Berokia said, actually, a woman or a child, in other words, people who would not normally be considered valid witnesses in the civil cause, a woman or a child is believed, ne'emenet, if they say, mikan yatzan chilze, the swarm of bees got out from here. So maybe we can establish ownership for this swarm of bees. And the Mishnah continues, and someone can then go into his field. And by his field, I think we mean the someone goes into someone else's field. Someone goes into his field, i.e. the field where the swarm now is, and he takes his swarm. And if he makes damage, he pays for what damage he causes, because he might have to climb up a tree or break down a fence or do something to get this swarm. The way you get a swarm is by taking, normally it settles on a branch. Normally it settles on a branch of a tree. So you would take hold of the branch and put a box or a vessel underneath, and you go shake, shake, shake. And the bees will fall off into your box or into your container. Well, if you go shake, 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 let's carry on. Aval lo yakotz et hasoche al manat liten damim. He shouldn't cut off the branch of the tree on the basis he's going to pay for its value. So maybe you're not going to go shake, shake, shake. Maybe rather than just shaking the branch, you want to cut off the branch where this swarm is sitting, and you want to carry it back to your garden. Or maybe after you've cut it off, you want to go shake, shake, shake and put it in the box. And we know in general, by the way, that we have to be very careful if we go into someone else's property. And we know in general that we're very careful about cutting down trees. So really interesting, the Mishnah says, look, you can go after your swarm, but you can't cut a branch. And Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Berokia, Rabbi Yishmael, beno shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Berokia, omer, kotzetz v'noten damem. Rabbi Yishmael says he cuts and he gives the money. In other words, he is allowed to cut to get back his swarm. And by the way, that is normal practice in the beekeeping community, although normally you would ask permission before cutting a branch to get your swarm back. But it is normal practice in the beekeeping community. You cut the branch and then you go shake, shake, shake. And that's what Rabbi Yishmael seems to be recommending, although we might observe that the halacha actually does not go according to Rabbi Yishmael.